Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Animas Corporation, providing insulin delivery products for people living with diabetes and part of the One Touch family. And by Dexcom. Take control of your diabetes with the world's first continuous glucose monitoring system that sends glucose readings directly to your compatible smart device. Live life on your own terms with Dexcom. Hey, it's Stacey. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, it's called Reversed, a reality TV show all about diabetes, type 1 and type 2, the brainchild of producer and host Charles Mattocks, and he's well aware that the name is raising eyebrows.
Reverse is about changing the person internally. It's not about reversing diabetes at all, and that's the key.
Even before the show airs next week, there's a lot of controversy around it, not just about that name. We'll talk about it. Plus, Bike Beyond. 20 riders, all with type 1, heading from New York to California. We continue our coverage with Amanda Oberski, who at first wasn't a fan of the idea.
Whoa, this is a terrible idea. That is so scary. I can't do that. I can't believe they're asking for people to do this. That's horrible. What sort of organization is this?
How she came around and how you can help the riders. And are you sure that's Diet Coke? A near miss at Disney World. It all starts now on Diabetes Connections. Welcome to another week of the show. I'm Stacey Sims. So glad you could join me. I am thrilled to have you here. If you're new to the show, we try to educate and inspire about type 1 diabetes by sharing stories of connection from athletes and celebrities in our community, as well as healthcare companies and the tech folks who are doing great things. But also, if you're not starring on TV or skiing in the Olympics, if you're just living day to day with diabetes, your stories are wonderful. I love sharing them. I love hearing them. And there's a lot of that on the show as well. Many of you may be joining me after hearing us talk about this at Friends for Life, the conference that just concluded last week. And that's also the reason why my voice is a little strained. I don't know if you can hear it. I'm pretty hoarse at the moment. And Friends for Life is a big reason why, not just because of doing the closing keynote, which was my first time doing this year. It was so exciting and fun to do that. But also because I gave myself the crazy project of talking to every exhibitor at this convention. This is the world's largest family diabetes convention. There are more than 50 exhibitors, sponsors, vendors, people selling product, people with charities. They're trying to get the word out. I talked to all of them on tape, and I'll be bringing you those stories in the weeks to come. But my voice needs to calm down first. So we're going to try to get through this show as best as I can. And today I'm thrilled to be talking to Charles Mattocks about the show Reversed. I heard a lot about this in the last couple of weeks. The show debuts next week on July 18th on Discovery Life. Check local listings. It's called Reversed, and that title alone, just makes me a little uncomfortable. I don't know how it makes you feel, but he says it's not about reversing diabetes. It's about reversing mindset. And you'll hear the whole interview, and I'll talk about my opinions more after I run the interview with Charles this episode. Also checking in with our friends at Bike Beyond and the great people at Beyond Type 1. Had a chance to talk with them as well at Friends for Life. So a lot more to come about the conference, as I said, in the weeks and maybe even the months to come. But I wanted to tell you a story about something that happened to me and Benny while we were there. So Benny comes with me. Sometimes my daughter comes. My husband has never come to this conference. He's usually working, or maybe he just doesn't want to come to Orlando in July because of the weather. But we snuck away one night. We had not done this before. The conference is at Disney World, but it's in one of the convention centers. Coronado Springs Resort is a Disney hotel and a convention center as well. And for most of the years we've gone, for all of the years, we've never left the convention center to go to a Disney park or a different resort. So this year we decided to spend an evening at Epcot, and we had a great time. I mean, the conference is exhausting enough, so we weren't staying late night and running around like crazy people like we usually do when we take a Disney vacation. But we stopped to have dinner, and Benny ordered a Diet Coke, And then the waiter came by and gave him a refill, out of one of those pitchers, and they poured it out of the side, and thanks very much. And he took a sip, and he said, I'm not sure this is diet. And recently, I have begun carrying Diasticks with me. Well, they're in Benny's meter case, so they're usually with him, but they were in my bag. And Diasticks are to test glucose in urine. But you can also dip them in drinks to see if they are diet, to see if there's sugar in them, because if there is sugar, they will change to this nasty dark color, and then you know that if you don't want to drink it, that you shouldn't. So we started carrying these with us very, very recently. We had an incident a while back, not too long ago, where we ordered a diet drink, and we're pretty sure it wasn't diet, and that's why Benny had some unexplained highs. And I had read about this in a column. I'll talk about that in a moment. And I said, it can't hurt. So I ordered them off Amazon. And this was the first time we used them in a real life setting. And lo and behold, he said the soda tasted funny. And he dipped the Diastick into the soda. And sure enough, it was not diet. The server was so apologetic. I mean, we didn't make a big deal about it or anything, but he came back. I never know what to do in those situations, right? My son is diabetic. We need to make sure it's Diet Coke. I mean, I didn't want to explain all that. Benny certainly didn't want me to explain all that. But the waiter took all the drinks off our bill, which I thought was very nice and really unexpected, and replaced it with a Diet Coke. And we checked again, and it helped us avoid, crazy high blood sugars at Disney World. So I will link up the Diastick information. What I will link up is the column that I read a while back that helped me find this out. It's a great column by Scott Johnson, who has his own wonderful blog, but this was him writing for his company, My Sugar. And he is very well known in the diabetes community for being a big fan of Diet Coke. In fact, we have to get Scott a contract. I mean, he's just so funny. But it is all about telling the difference. How do you know if your drink is really diet? And he goes way into detail into how the soda machines are hooked up and how you really may never know. And he talks about the Diasticks. He also talks about checking with a meter. So I'll link up Scott's column. It's a great read, and I hope it helps you as well. Plus, if you have small kids or even a 12-year-old, they love dipping stuff in things anyway. So this was something you may blow your budget on Diasticks, because I think Benny went through half the bottle just testing things around the house before we actually used it in real life. Okay, quick word from our sponsor. Let me tell you about Animas. I love working with Animas, and after 10 years, I love Benny's Animas insulin pump. I met a lot of people recently, maybe some of you at Friends for Life. So great to hear why so many of you love the Animas experience as well. They offer a choice of insulin pumps, so you can choose the one that's right for you or for your child. And with kids, it is great that Animas pumps really fit an active lifestyle. I love talking about our experience with Animas. They make it easy with great products and incredible customer service. To find out more about Animas, just go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Animas, part of the One Touch family logo. All summer long, we're keeping you up to date with the amazing people at Bike Beyond. At last check, they were heading through Missouri. They had stopped for the 4th of July last week and had some fireworks and a fun meetup with some families there. They also did some live streaming at the Friends for Life conference. I talked to many of the riders just before they set off. My interview with Amanda Oberski, we actually did this interview at the airport as she was heading to New York to kick the whole thing off. Amanda is the logistics coordinator. Her profile picture on their website shows her with an adorable little doggy. Of course, we have to talk about that as well. Here's my interview with Amanda. Thank you so much for talking to me. You're in transit, right?
Yeah, I'm currently at the airport in New Orleans, heading to New York for Bike Beyond.
And you're from San Francisco, so you're going in the wrong direction here, right? You're going like the opposite route you'll be taking.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's nice for me because it's like I am flying into New York and then I'm just biking home with my teammates.
Why did you decide to do this? Are you a big-time cyclist?
Actually, no. So I hadn't really ever heard of Beyond Type 1, and I'm not a cyclist. I've never been a cyclist. And I was just exploring diabetes community. Like, someone put Beyond Type 1 on my radar, and I was like, okay, let me check them out. And I saw I saw that there was this call for a cross-country bike tour, and like the mission of what was happening and how powerful it would be to like go across the country, and not only do the mission of the anti-brain, which is to educate and advocate and like raise money and awareness for a cure, but also to just like prove to ourselves and our community that we can do this. But my immediate reaction was like, whoa, this is a terrible idea. That is so scary. Like, I can't do that. I can't believe they're asking for people to do this. Like, that's horrible. What sort of organization is this? And then the more that I thought about, and so like that was my immediate reaction. And the more that I thought about it, the more I realized like that was me limiting myself based on how I thought this disease behaved and how I thought that I could or could not live my life. And so really like this cross-country bike tour has like already been incredibly life-changing for me, and thinking about my life and like my adventures in terms of things that I can do instead of things that I can't do.
And you were diagnosed about 12 years ago, it'll be 13 years this fall. Am I getting the math right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Wow. So do you mind if I ask how old you were when you were diagnosed?
I was in high school. It was the fall of my sophomore year of high school. And so high school is already like a big transitional period in any person's life. And so then adding this on top of it, it was a lot.
Yeah. When you were in high school diagnosed, what do you remember changing the most? Did you play sports? Were you worried about what your friends thought? Because that is a tough age.
I remember, so I had been, I probably had type 1 diabetes for about 6 months before I had been diagnosed. And so I remember just having all of the symptoms of having incredibly high blood sugar and like being so hungry, being so sleepy, being so thirsty. And so all of the typical symptoms of having type 1 or having DKA was what I was going through. And so the biggest change for me was that like as soon as I was diagnosed, all of those things went away. And I remember feeling so much better, but also I gained a bunch of weight because my body had been starving for the previous 6 months. So then as soon as I was able to actually process my food again, because I was giving myself insulin, I probably gained about 15 or 20 pounds. And that to my like teenage fragile self felt really bad. That was a moment in time that I think I like grew from, but it's something that like eventually my body evened out and I sort of returned back to normal, and I'm grateful that I was just like able to be healthy at that point. But at the time, my 15-year-old self was just really angry.
Yeah. I have a 15-year-old daughter. That must have been very difficult. That's a tough time regardless. And to lose weight and then to gain 15 pounds. I'm glad you're being so honest about it. Was there a time when you really thought that was going to be something you were always going to have to deal with? I mean, because with diabetes, there's food issues, there's weight issues anyway. I mean, it's tough. Yeah.
I think in the most recent years, I've become like very, in the past couple of years, I've realized that how I have been taking care of and managing my diabetes has maybe not been the most healthy. I was like severely limiting my food intake because it's risky to eat food, and because that's when you have to take insulin, and then that can mess up your blood sugars. And more recently, I would say in the past couple of years, I've just become okay with eating and like how good it makes my body feel to eat food. And so I'm focused and much more meticulous on making sure that I am eating, and then also trying to make sure that I am counting the right way and dosing the right way, so that I can get all the benefits of eating food, and it's also not scary.
Yeah. Have you shared this with the team? Because biking across the country, you have to eat.
Yeah. So we, the team is so I'm heading in tonight, and I'll meet the team in the next couple of days because we're all starting to fly in. And we've, like, half of our conversations have been about food and logistics, and everyone's really excited. And actually, some of the sponsors for Bike Beyond are a couple of organizations that make food. So one of them is called UCAN, and they make this, like, really amazing starch product. So it's like a protein shake, but it's not with protein, it's with their, like, magic starch. But if we drink that before we go on our bike rides, it like keeps us from having blood sugar crashes during the day because it takes your body so long to process the starch. So that's been really helpful. And then another like food donor is called No Foods, KNOW, and it's like their products are like No Better Foods, and they make a ton of very bready, very carby products, but they make them all with like coconut oil and almonds and and like sprinkles or a couple of other things that they just throw together, and then they turn out these really amazing products that don't actually affect our blood sugars very much. So that's been really awesome too. Yeah. Like discovering new products that I can eat, and they're yummy and they're really healthy and helpful.
Very cool. That's great. In your profile picture for Bike Beyond, you are holding the cutest dog. Who is that?
That's Apollo. I have a pug named Apollo. I got him as a puppy, and we spent so much time together in his first few years of life through training, and then I moved out to San Francisco, and he would come to work with me. So basically would spend 24 hours a day with Apollo. And through training and through just like adapting to my lifestyle on his own, he's picked up a lot of the similar traits that diabetic alert dogs are like very meticulously trained to do. So Apollo has met my doctors before and has alerted me on low blood sugar before, whether I'm sleeping and he wakes me up, or if I'm like in a meeting and not paying attention to it, and he'll paw at me. He's just the loveliest little animal.
He's cute. That's great, though. When you finish, you're flying from the West Coast to the East Coast, biking the other way. When you finish Bike Beyond, what will success look like to you? I mean, I assume this isn't about time. The distance. What is the accomplishment here? Is it the bike ride?
That's a really good question. I think for me, this has already been an entire shift in my mindset. So like I mentioned, when I originally heard of Bike Beyond, I initially thought that like, I can't do this. And also no one with type 1 diabetes can do this. And this is an impossible thing. So why are we even trying? And the shift in my mindset has already been so powerful. I just want to, like, success for me will be finishing the cross country tour and being able to tell myself, and like that voice inside my head that was screaming at me that I couldn't do it. Like, look, you did it. You can do it. And so could others. And maybe it's not that they want to bike across the country, but it's that things are still possible with like proper training and support and team and food products and whatever else, that things are still possible. And I don't want to set those limits for myself, and I don't have to.
That is fantastic. Amanda, thank you so much for talking to me in the airport. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, I'm like tearing up now in the airport, which is perfect because this is an exciting time.
More information at diabetes-connections.com. Of course, we're linking everything up to Bike Beyond. You can donate to Amanda or to any of the riders. They're raising money for great diabetes causes, and we'll continue to talk with them all summer long. Dexcom is a terrific supporter of Bike Beyond and of the podcast as well. And one of the best things about the Dexcom system is being able to send more information and communicate more clearly with our endocrinologist. The Dexcom G5 mobile CGM system gives you a reading every 5 minutes, so you can spot trends and get a dynamic picture of your blood glucose levels. At this point, we are adjusting a lot. Benny is hitting those teen years, and being able to send our information through Dexcom Clarity to our endocrinologist makes appointments a lot more productive as our doctor has more information related to Benny's glucose levels. Managing diabetes is not easy, but I feel like we have one of the very best CGM systems working for us. CGM-based treatment requires finger sticks for calibration, may result in hypoglycemia if calibration not performed, or symptoms expectations do not match CGM readings. For more information, go to Dexcom.com. My guest today is Charles Mattocks. He is the host of the new TV show Reversed. It makes its debut next week, July 18th, on Discovery Life Channel. You may have already heard of Charles Mattocks, a celebrity chef. He's been in a lot of diabetes magazines. He's been on a lot of shows and a lot of news and health shows. He was diagnosed type 2 in 2009, and you'll hear him talk about how that led him to this program. The interesting thing about this, well, there's a lot of interesting things about it, but it is sponsored by Mankind Corporation, the makers of the inhaled insulin Afrezza. So this is really a first in many ways. It's not really the first reality show appearance about diabetes. I mean, there's been some teen mom stuff, some appearances on American Idol, but I do believe this is the first reality show, and it is a series that goes on for a few episodes that is all about 100% about diabetes type 1 and type 2. As you'll hear, Charles is opinionated. He doesn't sound like he's too worried about making friends, and that already has rubbed some people the wrong way. He talks about that. And his methods, what sounds like the show may be holding up or modeling as some tough love, it may not be your cup of tea either. I'm going to give you some of my opinions after the interview. I'll tell you right now, I have not seen the show. Nobody has seen the show. There are some clips out there, but it has not yet aired as I'm doing this podcast, as I'm recording right now. And I want to watch it before I really form an opinion. I'll tell you, I'm excited that diabetes will be seen on television, that real people living with real diabetes. So at least we're going to talk about it, right? And maybe have a national conversation. And I want to give you a chance to get to know the producer and the host behind the show before it airs. So here's my interview with Reversed Charles Mattocks. Thanks for talking to me. I'm really excited to have you on today.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
All right. Well, congratulations on this show. There's a lot to talk about here today, but I want to start by asking you, how tough was it to make the pitch that we're going to do a show about diabetes? I mean, this seems to be a topic that people either don't want to talk about incorrectly, or think wouldn't appeal to anybody. Can you tell us a little about the pitch and how it came to be?
It was actually, for me, it was very simple. I mean, I was doing at one point an RV tour. I created the first of a diabetes RV tour. And what that meant was I was one day at a Walmart and I saw a big red bus and I thought, wow, wouldn't it be cool to have people, something like this for diabetes? So I reached out to a pharmaceutical company that I had started to do some work with, and they were very excited, and we started and created the first of a diabetes RV tour with Shire, which is a big pharmaceutical nutraceutical company. But while I was on the road and having success with the tour, I realized that I really wasn't reaching people. I realized that there were so many people who were coming up to the RV and that we were meeting around different states that were so unaware of what diabetes was. And I mean, I've seen people literally come up to me and say, Charles, I just was diagnosed and I just got metformin. And they didn't know anything about what metformin was. They didn't have a plan. They didn't know what an A1C was. This is after they were diagnosed. They didn't know what an A1C was. And I thought, wow, this doesn't make any sense. So I realized while I was reaching people, I wasn't reaching any people. So what I decided was, well, what's the best way to reach people? The best place is in the comfort of their own homes, right? I remember another time I was at one of my kids' school and I had said something to one of the teachers there who told me she was diabetic, and she said she didn't realize that diet soda wasn't good for her. And I thought, wow, what really are we learning? And when I was diagnosed, I didn't get any any education. I didn't get led in the right way. It was, listen, you've got diabetes, and I can give you some medication, and that's it. So I thought the best way to reach people was in the comfort of their own homes, where, let's face it, the majority of the millions of people in the United States with diabetes, are going to be sitting at home watching TV and dealing with their complications, dealing with the issues, and dealing with the ups and downs. And if we can combine all the people that they need to see in one show, from endocrinologists to dietitians to nutritionists, all of those people in one show, we could help educate people with type 1 and type 2.
And you have type 2 diabetes, right?
I do, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your diagnosis? You were in your 30s, and as you said, you didn't get a lot of education. Do you remember what you were thinking at the time?
I was terrified because I knew nothing about diabetes. I literally was just scared to death. And like I said, for him to just say, that you now have diabetes, I can give you medication, I was like, whoa, this doesn't make any sense. What next? What do I have to do? How do I fight this? What do I do? So I literally went home and had to, number one, look myself in the mirror, and physically, not just mentally, but I looked in the mirror and I said, Charles, you got to lose about 20 pounds. Not that I was overweight, but I just knew I needed to lose some weight because I was going to the gym a lot. I was working out a lot, but the type of working out I was doing was more lifting and getting bulky and big, and never did cardio. So I said, you know what, this is the first step. And I kind of went online to figure out, what diabetes was, and was very confused at the information that I found online, which can be very very daunting for some people. So I just realized, I said, you know what, number one, I've got to change the way I've been exercising. What I want to do is I want to just walk. I'm not going to hit the gym anymore. I'm going to walk and run and jog. And then I thought, you know what, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do God's diet. I figured, you know what, the best diet out here is fruits and vegetables and lean meat, and water. So that's what I did as far as, trying to figure out what diet so-called to go on, or what route to take, and all of that kind of stuff.
But did you feel alone? I mean, it sounds like you just were one of those people who has that attitude where you can help change yourself. I'm curious, did anybody help you out with that?
No, no. I had to, once again, I literally was inside the house for a couple of days, just online, trying to figure out what this was, trying to make my way. Because, you just diagnosed with something. You just were told you have a disease. So, that disease could be cancer, it could be leukemia, it could be, which is form of cancer, but it could be anything,
I guess my only point was, when my son was diagnosed with type 1, and of course he wasn't even 2 years old yet, we had a lot of help. We had a lot of education. They wouldn't let us leave the hospital until we had education. And I'm always surprised at how stark the difference is, not only for most people with type 2, but for adults diagnosed with type 1. And I'm wondering if that's part of what you're trying to do here with Reversed, is really say to people, hey, there are more resources out there, and here are some, rather than, as you said, going online and getting really scared.
Well, I think, and once again, I think the key factors that you just mentioned, that this was in the hospital. When I was diagnosed, it was literally over the weekend, where my doctor wasn't in office, and it was one of those, $99 clinics that you go to on the weekend when you're not feeling good. So that's what I was left with. I think, and especially when you talk about type 1, let's face it, that's a condition where you do need some serious education, because this is not just like when we think of type 2, it's just, give them a pill, and most of the times they're all right. So you slap them with some metformin or something like that, unless it's totally out of whack, where they do need some insulin, but But in type 2 cases, a lot of times it's just jump on this medication and go about your business.
So let me talk about the one question that I know is going to come up over and over again, at least in the type 1 community, and that is the name of the show. I read one review where they said, insert eye roll here. Why did you call it Reversed? What does that mean in terms of the show? It's insert eye roll here. But I tell you one thing that's good about that is that, and I forget who said that. I think it was Martin Luther King or something like that. But if you aren't being criticized for something that you're doing, that you're not doing the right thing. And I think a lot of people, we live in a world right now where everybody has an opinion, especially with social media. You can hide behind a computer and you can talk bad about people. You can trash people. You can knock people for no good reason without even knowing the facts. I mean, I find a lot of people may make a comment on it and they didn't even read it. They didn't read any information, and they'll just look at the name and they'll say, oh, it's type 1 can't be reversed, or this can't. And I'm like, it's not about reversing diabetes. Reversing, when I think about reversed, the first thing that came to my mind when I created this was that I was reversing my complications. I was reversing the forward progress that if I didn't take control of my diabetes, and uncontrolled diabetes would ravage me. So I was reversing by changing my diet, by changing my life, by losing weight, by getting right mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, that, I would reverse those complications that if I didn't take control of my diabetes, that it would lead me down a terrible road. So reverse is about changing the person internally. It's not about reversing diabetes at all. And that's the key. Once again, it's not about reversing diabetes at all. The key is reversing the person. That's what, once again, if I go back to what worked for me, I had to look in the mirror, the physical mirror, but also the emotional mirror too as well. And I had to say, Charles, what have you been doing? I know I've been eating wrong. Of course, type 1 and type 2 is very different, but you know what? Let me tell you something. I have type 1s whose parents come to me and say, Charles, I want my daughter on this show because she is drinking alcohol, she's going down the wrong path, she's doing terrible things. So remember, no matter what, type 1 and type 2, there are a lot of type 1s who aren't being compliant, who aren't taking their medication the way they should be, they aren't eating the way they should be, they aren't doing the right things that they should. So once again, what did she want her daughter on this show for? Because obviously she wanted her daughter to wake up and realize that her diabetes, be it type 1, was very serious, and that drinking alcohol and doing some of the things that she said her daughter was doing was going to kill her. Did that woman end up on the show? Did the young woman? Tell us about the cast, if you could, as much as you can, because this is a show where you're not just preaching about what people should do. This is where we follow the lives of these individuals, right?
Yeah. There's a big, I would think, that we would have a whole lot more support, especially from the health community and pharmaceutical companies and so on and so forth. But I gotta, obviously this is in a sense, and for them it's controversial because they don't know. They probably think this is about reversing diabetes. So no pharmaceutical company per se wants to jump on board something that they says reversed, right? That's what they want to do, is keep people on medication. So, I was fortunate enough in a short period of time, literally, it only took me a couple of weeks to find a sponsor. And I was fortunate enough that it was a company that needs change and is looking to do some exciting things. They
we can
actually
talk about
have a great
that.
product.
This is Mankind, right? They make a Freza.
Yeah,
we've talked about that
exactly.
on the show. I personally think it's really exciting and interesting. There's some controversy, which mostly seems to be about the stock and business side of Mankind, but I don't need to talk about that now. We've talked about that before. But there's no problem in talking about that, and I think it's really interesting that they've done that. I'm curious, in their sponsorship, are the people on the show using a Freza, or is it more of an education about it? How does their sponsorship work?
No, none of the people are using Afrezza. And one of the things that I wanted to do, well, now one person is using Afrezza. She's actually a CDE and also a type 1 diabetic who is doing amazing on Afrezza, but that was after the show.
Okay.
But one thing I wanted to do was make sure that it wasn't something where it looked like because Afrezza sponsored it that we had to shove Afrezza down people's throats, right? Because once again, what are you going to have? Criticism. So there's somebody waiting, so even Stat News, who slammed us because for whatever reason, this lady had a personal vendetta against me. I mean, it had nothing to do with the show because, trust me, she talked to plenty of people on the show whose lives have changed, and she didn't even want to mention any of that. It was more about my magazine, about Afrezza. So she seems like she had a personal vendetta against Afrezza and me personally. No, so we don't mention Afrezza. We don't educate people per se about Afrezza on the show because I wanted to make sure that no one had anything to say. So if one person, so she kept asking about this. So if one person would have said, yeah, I'm on Afrezza, then it would have made it seem like, then she would have had another angle to say, this is why Afrezza sponsored the show, because they have people who are on the product and they're trying to push their product, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So we kept it very, very neutral. I believe in the product. I think it's amazing, and I've seen lives being changed on Afrezza. But I think that the sponsorship and will come out during the commercials. We have some other teasers that we're going to be doing, so millions of people will be able to understand and know about Afrezza for the first time, right? Yeah. Because there's so many people who don't know about Afrezza that if they saw a commercial with Afrezza, they'd be blown away. So that's how that relationship goes. So you kind of got to know how to walk the line because, like I said, there's always somebody looking to knock you down. I mean, I could be handing out water to homeless people in the hood, and somebody will say, well, why is he handing out that type of water and why is he choosing that hood?
Tell me a little bit about the people on the show. How many people are there? What will we see in the course of the episodes? It sounds like it's all finished, right? I mean, like most reality shows, you guys are done now, but we're going to see that process.
Yeah. We have 5 people, and I kind of handpicked them. Some I didn't know, some I just was introduced to. Margie, she's a type 2 diabetic, sweet little Latin lady when I first met her. I mean, she was very excited about the whole thing when I first met her. She told me, she said, Charles, I don't like green leafy vegetables. Then I came to hear maybe about 2 weeks later that she was allergic to green leafy vegetables. So by the time we got to the show, our first challenge that we did with them was to make a lettuce wrap blindfolded, and she didn't want any lettuce on that thing. So she chose like a little piece of wrap that we had. Now Margie is sending me pictures every day with green leafy vegetables, smoothies, and salads every day. She's lost probably about 25 pounds since the show. She's exercising every day. She has become an advocate from the show. And once again, I go back to what worked for me. A lot of people with diabetes, especially type 2 diabetes, they need a little bit of inspiration. They need some basic education because, one of the first things I asked is, I said, do you know what diabetes is? And, they may have a general idea, but none of them could tell you what diabetes is. So with that being said, how can you fight anything if you don't know what it is? Right. How can you fight anything? Going to the doctor and the primary care physician and telling you, lose some weight and go on a diet. Well, what is a diet? You know what I'm saying? How do you lose weight? How do you reinforce these methods?
I always say if it was that easy, we'd all be a size 2, right? Oh, just go lose some weight. Yeah, sure.
Man, I'm trying to lose weight now, and it's like, goodness gracious, it's 10 pounds. And you hear some people are like, man, yeah, I lost 20 pounds. I'm like, how did you do that? I'm trying to lose 3, and I can't get this thing off of me.
Yeah, man. So this is not, though, I'm imagining this not like shows such as The Biggest Loser. You're not pushing people on the treadmill and yelling at them, and we're not going to see 200-pound weight loss, right?
See, I think imitation is the best form of flattery. But what I was smart enough to do was, like anyone who was smart enough, you look at what someone who may be your competitor, you look at their good and you look at their bad. You look at what worked for them, and you look at what didn't work for them. So no, this isn't. You're talking about people who have a condition, a serious illness. You have one person on the show actually has half a leg and 5 toes missing on the other foot. So there's no way we were going to get these people or trying to get these people in any form of competition. The only competition I say is within oneself, right? So this was, once again, about, we put them in certain challenges and putting them in certain situations that they would be able to either feel what someone felt. So let's say it was the blindfold challenge, right? And having to make a meal without being able to see. Now, we know that retinopathy is a serious situation. And blindness diabetes is the leading cause of blindness, right? So what we wanted to do was have people kind of put them in a situation where maybe they were blind and or had limited sight, and some of them did. How would you go about doing something like this? The simple things that most of us take for granted, but realizing the complications are very serious. Remember, for most of us, we can't feel diabetes, right? So if we have a high, we may feel a high, may feel a low, but it's not something where we can say, okay, man, I ate this burger, and man, I'm all messed up. I know for me, it doesn't work like that. But the complications are there. So we put them in another situation where I bought these oversized clothes, and they had to try to put them on with one hand. So they had to put on pants, put on a shirt, and tie them up and button them up and all that kind of stuff like that. Kind of showing like if you were with limited ability with a hand or a leg, what it would feel like. Now, once you put people in these certain situations, now they're able to really say, wow, this is what it could be like if I don't take control of my diabetes and get this thing under control, because this is where it's headed.
What do you hope comes out of this program?
I want to fire up the business of diabetes. I want them to wake up. I want them to start to educate people and inspire people and not spend millions and millions of. Someone told me yesterday, Nova Nordis does the silly, and I say that, silly bike ride and stuff. If I can tell you the millions that they spent, and I'm not talking 10, 20 million, I'm not talking 30 million. If I can tell you the millions that they spend sponsoring the bike rides, which to me is absolutely foolishness, because I don't know, for the person who's sitting at home dealing with retinopathy or neuropathy or whatever it may be, this doesn't do anything for them, right? So, I don't know if this is for the upper middle class or the wealthy, these bike rides that go across wherever they go. But this has to stop. We need to reinvest into the people. And we need to really get the message out there. What marketing campaign have you seen of late on television or a billboard that you could say, wow, that's awesome, right? You see, breast cancer has a ton of awareness. They've got buses for breast cancer. They've got billboards for breast cancer.
They've got October. They have a whole month. I mean, we have November, but they own pink.
Well, what happens in November? Nothing.
Right.
It comes at November 14th, comes and goes, and we did nothing. So unless we're able to, and this is where I think, any issue between type 1 and type 2, and I don't understand that too as well. It's diabetes at the end of the day. Whether it's type 1 or type 2, to me it's diabetes. We need to be working together the support from type 1, I want to be just as strong as there is with type 2, because at the end of the day, what we want to do is let people know about diabetes and let them understand what type 1 is, let them understand the severity of type 1, let them understand what type 2 is, but let them be able to know that, there are almost 5 million people dying from diabetes complications a year. Right, it's almost 500 million people with diabetes.
I'm curious to get your take, because obviously you're not afraid to be outspoken about this, which is fabulous. I'd like to get your take on the shame and the blame that seems to go along with type 2. And for the record, I agree with you about the diabetes community being stronger together. I mean, there are differences, obviously, but we need each other to make differences, to make change, and to yell and scream and get the attention. But I wonder sometimes, some people I know with type 2 feel like they don't deserve a voice. If only I ate better, if only I exercised, and all the jokes on social media and all the easy jokes on TV. Is that something that you either address in the show or that you try to help people out with? Because it just, I don't know, there's this air of inevitability sometimes that comes with type 2, and I think a lot of it is because of that shame and embarrassment.
Well, I think the show, number one, will do that on its own, right? Because having a show based on diabetes and it hitting major cable network will, obviously allow people to say, whoa, this ain't so bad. You know what I'm saying? It's bad, but, I don't have to be quiet about it. I can share it. I can tell other people about what I'm dealing with. I can, find some solace in seeing some other people who are just like me, who are dealing with these situations just like me. So, I've always been outspoken. And, I do see people at times who don't want to talk about their diabetes. And I tell them, listen, be proud. Talk about what you got, man. Maybe because you can help somebody else if you share it and you become an advocate of it, or you just stand up for what you have. But get you and remember that lack of pride also can hurt someone, because if they're not seeking the proper attention, if they're too embarrassed to go out here and go see the right nutritionist and dietitian and diabetes educators, then they're going to hurt themselves, and they're not going to do what they need to do to better themselves.
Wow. I hope this helps. I really do. It sounds terrific. But before I let you go, Charles, I haven't mentioned, and I'd love to ask, your uncle is Bob Marley.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It's can you share anything about that? I mean, has he inspired you in some ways? Such a beloved person.
He did. I mean, and it's ironic, because I remember when that story from that terrible reporter came out the other day, and I remember seeing an interview with my uncle where this one reporter, female reporter, literally just kind of sideswiped him and started talking about Rastafari and what it was, and his ganja smoking and this, that, and the other thing. And my uncle came from such a beautiful place, and obviously that's why he's moved and inspired people for so long. And I kind of feel like the same way. When you his inspiration was that back then he was controversial. Mm-hmm. Right? He was controversial because he talked about a Rastafari. He talked about marijuana. He talked about things about war. He talked about emancipation. He talked about Marcus Garvey. He talked about things that shouldn't be talked about in public by a man who had dreadlocks and that nobody understood. So I think that's the same way as far as his inspiration with me, is that I remember he once said, if my life is just for me, I don't want it. And when I think about people who, whether you're type 1 or type 2, and once again, the support of the show is key for people with diabetes. If we don't support this show, we hurt our cause. So for whether you have type 1 and you want to say, oh, well, it can't be reversed, and you don't know what the show is really about, and you haven't even taken 2 minutes to actually look into the show, then it hurts our cause. Because remember, we don't want to be foot soldiers attacking each other while the generals are standing and living in the palaces, right? because that's what happens in communities like this, whether it's pain community, diabetes community. We seem to do a good job of destroying each other and trying to knock this one for that belief and tear this one down for that one. If we came together as 400 million people with diabetes and actually had a voice, we could shake up the world. We could move these people. But you got to remember, they like us divided. They like us splintered. Because if we're splintered, then we don't realize how much power we have, right? So we need to have one voice. We need to get behind shows like this and movements like this and other advocates who are doing some things. And we need to say kudos and congratulations and keep pushing those people forward, because without folks like me and other people who are just like you yourself, even with this radio show, then what do we have? We have a system that is run by major pharmaceutical companies that have the shareholders' best interests at heart. So whether you're with the JDRF, which does fantastic work, or the ADA, which does good work, at the end of the day, they're a business that has to raise hundreds of millions of dollars. And do they have our best interests at heart? Yeah, they do. But they also have shareholders. They also have stockholders. They also have bills to pay and a business to run. So we have to realize that at the end of the day, we have us. And if we stick together, then we can move all of these people, and we can move mountains.
More information about the show and about Charles at diabetes-connections.com. Again, the show airs next week for the first time, July 18th on Discovery Life Channel. You'll have to check local listings. I was surprised, I'll be honest with you. Maybe it's because in my years of radio, I'm more used to people being, I don't know if slick is the right word, but, Charles was not afraid, as I said in the introduction, to kind of rub people the wrong way. I mean, he slams the Novo Nordisk bike team, saying it's silly. He talks about conspiracy theories in pharmaceutical industry. Maybe he reflects a lot of the way that you feel. Are these companies spending money that should be spent in other ways? Lowering the price of insulin, for example, that sort of thing. Again, when I heard about some of the methods, making sandwiches blindfolded, or what did he say, like putting your shirt on with one hand, that makes me kind of cringe. But I'll tell you something. Again, haven't seen the show. I am not a therapist. I am not a doctor. I don't believe in scared straight methods, especially for kids with type 1 or young adults with type 1 diabetes, because, there's no such thinking when you're a teenager that, what I do now is really going to make a difference later. A kid without diabetes, don't eat the junk food because when you're 60, you might regret it. That doesn't work. If you have diabetes and I'm going to take you to the kidney dialysis clinic and show you what could happen. And, a lot of people do that with their kids. And the kids, well, as adults now, I've had several people tell me that made them say, I give up, because if that's my future, what am I trying it for anyway? And I think it's something that is well intended, but can easily backfire because the young brain just cannot process that. I mean, my brain can't. I'm 45 years old, and I'm not eating as many vegetables and exercising as much as I should to keep myself healthy. When I'm 80, I should be doing like stretches every morning, and I'm trying, and I live well, and I try to live in a healthy way. But nobody's perfect, and knowing that something bad could happen doesn't necessarily make you behave in a better way. In fact, it can backfire. However, I also know a lot of adults who did not make health changes until they had a scare, right? We all know that person who had a heart attack and got a second chance and changed their life and is much healthier now for it. Somebody diagnosed with type 2 who had a big scare and changed their life and is healthier for it. So I will leave that to the health experts and the therapists. It just doesn't sound like the kind of thing I would like, trying to see what it's like to have one hand and putting the clothes on to teach you to take care of your diabetes. It's not how I roll. But it doesn't mean it's not what could work for someone. So let's watch the show. Let's hold off our opinions until we see it. I'd love to know what you think. I definitely wish he had called it something other than reversed. Diabetes is not something that can be reversed, type 1 or type 2. It can be, the symptoms can be reversed. But at the same time, reverse is just such a loaded word in our community. I wish he had found a way to, maybe he's looking for the controversy, I don't know, but I wish he'd found a way to call it something else to be more inclusive and to get a conversation going in a different way. Instead, anytime anyone talks about the show, you have to talk about the title first, right? You have to get past that. Maybe that was what he wanted to do. Okay, so much more to come. This is a show that's going to be going on for the next couple of weeks. Let me know what you think. Stacey at diabetes-connections.com. And of course, all the information on everything we talked about today, the testing your soda from the article with my sugar at diabetes-connections.com, as well as Bike Beyond. It's all going to be there on the website. If you like what you heard, please spread the word. I'd love for you to share this with somebody touched by diabetes. You can do that directly from the app if you're listening that way. Do you have the app? Diabetes Connections is available as an app, Android or Apple, or on any podcast platform. Woo! Okay, my voice held up through the end of this episode. I'm so excited about that. I'm going to go drink some tea with honey and lemon, right? Isn't that what I'm supposed to be doing? I'm going to go drink some tea, and then I will get to work. Lots to bring you in the weeks to come. I'm Stacey Sims, and I'll see you back here next week.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.